1700 to 1725, life on a sugarcane plantation.
The Spanish were the first to settle and import Africans for slave labor. Soon after the British takeover of Jamaica in 1655, the island was divided into administrative parishes. St. James Parish was the largest sugarcane producer. Enslaved Africans who arrived there found a rural landscape of sugarcane and seashore. Outside the harvest season, workdays lasted up to 13 hours, 5 to 6 days per week. Harvest time increased demands requiring 6 days of a week in the fields and an overnight shift and every other night in the hot, humid processing house. Work on coffee plantations were more humane. Coffee workers lived longer and had more children than those of sugarcane plantations.
1725 to 1750, Sunday markets.
On Sundays, people gathered at the closest market, which was usually located in a port town. These centers of commerce, Jamaicans exchanged not only good but also information. Vendors included white Jewish merchants who sold imported goods, free people of color who sold local goods, and enslaved people who mostly bought fruits and vegetables. Buyers including everyone on the social spectrum. Slave owners often bought fruits and vegetables, baskets, and even furniture from the very people they enslaved to work on their fields. By the 1750s, many enslaved laborers could afford non-essential goods like sugar, alcohol, and accessories such as metal buttons and hair ribbons that expressed their personality and identity.
1750 to 1775, a mixture of cultural traditions.
Enslaved peoples from West Africa, notably Ghana and Nigeria, came from various cultural traditions. When they arrived in Jamaica, they were expected to assimilate into local culture despite their varying languages, religion, and origins. Black people were born into slavery in Jamaica were called Creoles. Creole culture would form the base of Jamaican culture, language, food, and traditions. One of these traditions, Obeah, emerged from the mixture of African religions, mysticism, witchcraft, and a belief in either good or bad magic. Practicing obeah became illegal in 1760 because slave owners thought it encouraged revolt, so people practiced in secret.
1775 to 1800, rebellions and the Second Maroon War.
By the end of the 18th century, more than 80% of the population was enslaved. They weren't content to remain that way, though, and rebelled in many ways, both large and small. Maroon communities, made up of enslaved people who had escaped, dotted the countryside. In 1795, the Second Maroon War began, and several Maroons were caught and beaten after stealing a pig from a plantation. There had been other wars with Maroons, many which ended in a stalemate. After living in for over a century in the countryside, the Maroons had become effective guerrilla warriors, despite Britain's large numbers and greater firepower.
1800 to 1825, plantation work.
Slavery on sugar cane plantations was particularly brutal. Work gangs were organized based on strength and health. The strongest cut cane, planted, and fertilized. Others worked at factories that turned sugarcane into raw sugar and then rum. Still others worked as skilled masons, coopers, and metal workers who kept the plantations running. Women were forced to work as cooks, nurses, seamstresses, and other domestic roles. Older, feebler people cleaned and acted as guards. Enslaved households were given small plots called provision grounds, where they grew yams, maize, and plantations for their families for trade. Home was often a small two-room hut and a palm thatched roof and dirt floor.
1825 to 1850, the end of slavery.
After the British Empire ordered emancipation, Many newly freed Jamaicans left the countryside for jobs inside cities like Manville and Kingston. Others used their provision grounds for small scale farming, growing crops such as ginger, bananas, and sell at nearby markets. Villages grew up around farms, providing access to churches and schools. Education created a path to upward mobility as the first educated generation of black Jamaicans became teachers or ministers, no longer restricted by slaves owners. Obeah became more mainstream. As Maroons joined the larger society, they introduced the bar cutting technique of jerking, coating meat in with a hot, spicy texture before slow cooking that they had learned from the indigenous Taino people.
1850 to 1875, sweet tastes.
In 1866, Jamaica became a crown colony, which left Jamaicans under British belt and without voting rights. Families that had been fractured by slavery attempted to reunite after emancipation. Jamaican men were determined to set up their own households and provide for their children and families. This task involved tough labor such as construction or farming. As sugar prices fell, Jamaican farmers turned to a new export crop such as coffee and bananas. The Jamaican desert matrimony became popular. It was a tart mixture of fruits and cheese and black currants, reflecting many Jamaicans' preference for savory over sweets.
75 to 1900, banana industry.
For the average Jamaican, small farms were the best hope for making a living and gaining social mobility. They would trade nuts, fruits, yams, and handicrafts in the markets across the island. In the country, Jamaicans lived a simple one-story house. This is with straw or palm thatched roofs. City dwellers and more affluent lived in brick houses that were often 2 or 3 stories. Parts of Kingston gained access to electricity starting in the 1890s. The banana industry played prominently in Jamaican life, as the Boston Fruit Company, later called the United Fruit Company, established a base in eastern Jamaica and exported bananas around the world.
1900 to 1925, world shakers.
An earthquake in 1907 wrecked the city of Port Royal, and along with the fires, destroyed much of downtown Kingston. Around 1,000 people were killed. Every building in Kingston was damaged. Thousands lived outside for weeks, grateful that the weather stayed dry. Many Jamaicans left the island to work on the Panama Canal, sending money home to their families. The work was very dangerous, and many died of yellow fever. In Panama, many Jamaicans were exposed to new ideas about race through black nationalist movement. Early leaders proposed repatriating black people to Africa to end racial strife in the Americas and bring prosperity to people of African descent.
1925 to 1950, export in Jamaica.
In accordance with black nationalist ideals, Jamaican farmers set up a co-op to compete with the foreign companies such as United Fruit, which dominated the market at the time. In the 1930s, Jamaican Rastafarianism began as a movement to fight oppression and unite people of African descent. Labor unions began to form. Rastafarians revered Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie, saw Ethiopian as their promised land and clashed with the British run government. Meanwhile, a new generation of Jamaican Panamanians was joining the wave of Jamaican laborers to New York City. The English fluency gave them advantages that they sought out jobs in the manufacturing rush of World War II. Many lived in Harlem, which at the time was the center of black culture.